Yeah, sure. Thanks for coming, everyone, today. This is Liz Harris from SUSU Sustainability, talking about her role as a sustainability manager and insights into the role. So,
Thank you, Eloise. Thanks to Jane as well for the invite. Nice to see you all. Thank you for coming along on a rare sunny afternoon in December. I'm Liz. I'm Sustainability Manager at the Students' Union here at the university. I'm going to give a bit of a whistle-stop tour through my career in sustainability and talk a little bit about my role here, but more about sort of in the 20 years that I've been working in sustainability, just some things that I think, I don't know, might be useful for you to know. And I'll try not to be too controversial because this is being recorded. But I will try and it's more of like just a candid chat, really. And these are sort of some slides. I could have done this without a PowerPoint, really, but I've just put some photos in from the various places I've worked, just as an aid memoir, and also because it's nice to scroll through your phone and realise all the photos you have of bins in particular. And it's really weird. In my career, I've tried to get away from waste management, and yet I've always somehow boomeranged back to it somehow. So just a little bit, I started a geography degree at the University of Exeter. I'm from Southampton originally, by the way. I'm from Bassett. I went to Cantell many years ago. And I applied and got into Exeter for geography. I was really excited because I love Devon, and the thought of doing physical geography in Devon was really exciting. And it was really odd, the degree at Exeter in the early noughties. It was and I'm all for reading for your degree, and I love going to the library and, all of that, but it had hardly any contact time and no field trips, which you would think a physical geography degree would have sort of done some field work. So I really didn't click, and I was really sad about that because I'd sort of for years thought, I'm really looking forward to kind of doing this kind of degree here. So I changed course. I left my Russell Group University after the first year and went to a post-92 Polytechnic. I went to Plymouth and I did environmental science for 2 years because I'd passed the first year. So I just did the other 2 years at Plymouth and had a whale of a time. And I'm so glad I did that, and did lots of stuff around contaminated land. I avoided the waste management modules because I don't want to do waste management. I'll do contaminated land and marine geography and all of that sort of exciting stuff. And yet I ended up working in waste management for some of my career. So a brilliant degree, really, really good. And just another thing in terms of qualification. So I don't have a master's. I left after my Bachelor of Science at a time when you could do that, I think, perhaps slightly more easily than now. Don't know, for debate, perhaps. And just to say, I'm a member of no longer IEMA, Institute of Sustainability and Environmental Professionals, ISEP, and have been for many years. I think they're a very good organisation, very good professional body. And just one tip, whatever field you end up working in, it's just worth casting your eye over the ISEP's Code of Professional Conduct, because I find that quite a useful kind of tool for when you're trying to kind of make the case as a sustainability professional for why you're doing something, and the reasons why you're doing it, often because you want to demonstrate integrity and why it matters to the environment. The kind of Code of Professional Conduct is really useful as a way of saying that this really matters. I'm here as a professional to give you this advice, and this is why. So you're not sometimes you can feel slightly compromised in these roles. So just a top tip. That's a CV. Well, don't worry about that. I'll break it down into some nice, colourful photos instead. So I left Plymouth and I came back here and I temped for a while at Hampshire Constabulary when Shirley had a police station, and what an eye-opening job that was. I absolutely loved that job. I was doing CCTV from around the city. What an interesting city we live in. And I really enjoyed that job, but I didn't think I wanted to be in kind of criminal justice for my entire career because I'd done environmental science. And I was very lucky a position came up at a consultancy in the New Forest called WIG, who are now Tetra Tech. I think they've been, as is many of the cases with consultancies, they get bought out and then they get bought out again. So this company is now Tetra Tech, and I think they still have an office in Hampshire. But I joined as a sort of graduate environmental technician. They had a spot, and the reason I found out about that job was because someone on my course at Plymouth had got a job with them and a position had come up. So, it's sometimes that's who you know, or the fact that I wouldn't have seen that job had I not known that person. So, and that was working in the local authority waste collection team. So they were specialists in waste and recycling. working with councils at a time when lots of councils were implementing fortnightly recycling collections, which is now a commonplace across the UK. But 20, 25 years ago, it was a bit groundbreaking, and lots of councils were struggling to kind of implement this 1 week general waste and 1 week recycling. Anyway, so we were brought in to work with those councils to help them actually implement those schemes on the ground and then deal with all the residents' complaints. So I spent 3 months working for Waverley Borough Council in Surrey, very nice leafy part of Surrey, answering all the very affluent residents' complaint letters about why it was absolutely outrageous they were having to recycle fortnightly and general waste every other week when they had nannies and children's parties and lots of waste. And it seems so mad now that that was a thing. Anyway, there you go. That was really interesting, spend your sort of 3 months of your life writing emails, just non-stop. Waste often goes hand in hand with minerals. So if you imagine historically, people have dug holes in the ground and then they filled them with waste. And that's, ta-da, there's your landfill site. So alongside sort of the waste side of the consultancy, there was the mineral planning side. So we still quarry in the UK, still lots of active quarries. We need aggregate and minerals and rock for infrastructure in the economy. So I started doing a bit of work for that team as a technician and going out and doing monitoring of quarry sites and obviously monitoring landfill gases as well. That's an ongoing job. But quarries are amazing for wildlife, absolutely, generally amazing for wildlife. And so often quarrying, developments of any kind require ecology surveys. So I made myself sort of available to go and help working under licenses for the ecologists that were in WIG, working under their licenses and just helping out and gaining a bit of experience, because really that was sort of where my passion lies. As much as I love a good, bin collection, really it was going into quarries and seeing this array of protected species and nesting birds and amphibians and reptiles and ensuring those were sort of surveyed to be protected in terms of whatever development came. So I started doing that. And from that, I then got the next position that I went on to. But while I'm on the subject of consultancy, because clearly consultancy is it's a very large sector, sustainability consultancies, lots of them. I think it's worth saying that I didn't mind working in the private sector, but you are often, as a consultant, you are obviously working for a client. You have to kind of produce what they need for their project, their development, and what was always quite difficult, less so on the quarrying side of things because of how quarries can be managed and then restored afterwards. But for other developments, I remember working on a kind of housing development in Fareham where there was this beautiful site that was just going to be sort of bulldozed and sort of built on. And that's a lot of consultancy work. Ecology consultancy work is often doing that. You are mitigating the worst of a development. And that can be I found that quite hard to deal with. And often you are working all over the country as well. Consultants will take on work from wherever clients are. And so you're driving in the middle of the night somewhere to then, work the next day and then drive home. And so all of that means that, consultancies are good. And clearly they certainly have a place. But they are often, you are there to satisfy a client's needs. And that I found could be a little bit tricky. So that's why when this job came up at the RSPB in 2010, I applied for it. I didn't know I was going to get it. I really liked birds, but I am no ornithologist. And I had thought that the interview, they would just like show cards of birds and go, what's this? What's this bird? But what they really wanted was someone who had a background in understanding how quarries worked and the planning system and, the sort of compliance and processes and procedures to work on this restoration kind of program that was in partnership with Natural England. And it was a very exciting project. We worked all over the country, working with mineral sites to advise them on restoring their quarries back to nature reserves, and doing so at very, very large scales. It was like wildlife gardening on a very, very large scale. So I was sort of sharpening my kind of ecology knowledge all of that time, and sort of kind of landscape engineering skills, and that was very, very exciting. Because it started off as a sort of joint project with Natural England, and then when the funding changed, we were funded by the European Union for the sort of final couple of years of the project. And when you are funded, and a lot of, not just in charities, but even obviously universities are receiving funding for projects and proposals, you have to satisfy those funders, and you have to kind of continually demonstrate what you're doing and outputs. And what that meant for this project was we needed to work across the country. You needed to have multiple sites. You needed to sort of be submitting evidence and demonstrating what you were doing, to the point where I was run ragged and couldn't really focus on a site and see it through, and work with and sort of have just a couple of sites where we really saw a project through, or saw the development through. And that was really, really tricky. And I became quite unwell as well, because there was sort of not just the demand on the funding, but just the, it's 4 a.m. I need to get up. I've got to drive to Stanhope Moor in the North Pennines to visit a silica sand quarry and talk to the county planning officer and the landowner. And then I've got to get in the car and drive back. And after a few years of doing that, combined with the work in consultancy, I realised it was wearing me out. I also had opportunities to go and work for BirdLife in Cambridge and do some more international kind of quarry restoration work. And I actually came to the conclusion that I didn't want to do that. And that was, again, quite difficult, because I think when I was growing up and possibly at university, you're like, oh, I'm going to go and work all over the place. And, all these opportunities out there, and it'd be amazing to work overseas. And the realization that that was not going to be a thing that would probably make me happy and would wear me down was quite hard. But I'm glad I didn't do that and then get unwell and sort of let the project down and all of those things. So RSPB, brilliant charity. Oh my God, they're amazing. And it's lovely still to see kind of colleagues. You see them on Springwatch or on BBC programmes. Like, oh, that's what you're doing now. That's amazing. But not the best employer, I would say. Charities, conservation charities, RSPB in particular, are one of the notorious for being very low payers in the sector compared to, say, wildlife trusts and National Trust and others. So combined with that, made it very difficult to kind of, eke out a living and rent a flat down in Devon and do all of that kind of stuff with all the travelling, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very, very hard. I mean, the one thing I was very proud of was working on these sorts of projects. So this is Poole Harbour. This is the tip of Arm Peninsula, which is an RSPB site. It's a very old ball clay quarry. And we engineered a kind of tidal creek into Poole Harbour so that this would fill on the tide and turn into a tidal lagoon, saline lagoon. And we didn't know how long it was going to take. It took 5 months in the end. And in the last few, certainly, series of Springwatch, the team have been at Arn, and I would occasionally catch glimpses of this with the oyster catchers who are nesting on that island now. And you're like, no, I had a little bit of involvement in that, and wrote articles for Mineral Planning Journal and talked about all the great stuff that these projects were bringing, because it was about communicating to wider audiences about, some of the benefits of quarry restoration. So very exciting, but knackering. Very knackering. So come 2015, I was struggling a little bit living in Devon in a very beautiful sort of seaside location. But I realised I needed to move back to Southampton and look for a job sort of in one place. So I moved back to Southampton. I was still working for RSPB at that point, doing, commuting and doing all the kind of project management. And then this job came up at the University of Winchester, this environmental projects assistant role. And I applied for it, and I was up against, I think it was like there was 85 other applicants, some of whom were Simon Kemp's students. There were certainly some kind of graduates from here. And because it was sort of graduate level job. However, I'd been working 10 years by that point, nearly, and had lots of sort of experience and could sort of draw on that. And in the interview, obviously, was able to demonstrate some of that. And I did feel a bit bad. I'd sort of taken a graduate level job as someone who was kind of already through a career, partly. But I needed to do that. And I took a pay cut as well to do that, because again, Winchester, this was not particularly well, but it was a graduate entry job, really. So you can imagine it was fairly early 20,000s. Not that it's about them. It hasn't ever been about the money for me. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be working in these jobs that I am. But yeah, that was quite, again, another realization that being in one place, protecting your mental health, having a site or a campus you could sort of look after